Calgary's Catholic Church, along with some of the major paintings I'll show you in the next room. They're interesting for a number of reasons, not least of which is technical, and I'm very indebted to Helena Hadala and Louise Paget, who are here today, who walked me through a little bit about some of his technique working on these drawings. What he would do is he would take, well, this is not uncommon, to take a wet paper so that the ink can leave an interesting line. But what is, I think, more uncommon is that he would use a quill marker, quill or bulrush, that would give an edge. If you see prints where you have etchings, you'll sometimes have a furred edge on the line. And this is essentially what we get with these drawings here. And these drawings are simply showing, just as we, and it's very timely if you think about it, with the Dalai Lama here in the city, someone who is aware of the potential for spiritual humor, I guess one could say. A man who laughs easily, a man who is gracious in his understanding of what it means to be aware of both tragedy and humor. And that's what these figures are. They are figures who are essentially pointing us to both the ridiculousness and the humor, and if I may add a third quality, the grace of human existence. They're not particularly grace-filled figures. This man here reminds me of myself in the gym, but nonetheless, you know, it is a figure that is human all too human, I would suggest. Now, if we turn our gazes to this gallery here, I was very pleased to have this opportunity to bring this room together. This is what we're calling the landscape room. And what happened was that as Gyo-Zo became known for the works that you're going to see in the next rooms, people forgot that he had an interest in landscape. And really, the early exhibitions were often showing landscape works. And as he said to me, and I'm quoting it here on the wall, "If you're from the prairies, a chunk of grass is all you need." He never gave up his interest in the prairie landscape. He never gave up his interest in landscape at all. So he wanted us to understand that and to see that the interest was there from the 1950s through to the present. So you see then that, again, using this interesting wet ink drawing style and the quill brushes, he starts to do drawings of stumps. These then are not intended to be subjects that are at all dramatic. Rather, they are simply poetic evocations of a place. And I was really pleased to see these ones here. Really, they are about grass. You know, that's all you know, that's all you need to know, right there. He did some prints. These are two prints from his collection. This one here is from the National Gallery, the Thaw Patches from 1960. And as you can see on the wall here, it says, "More landscapes, rocks again, they pop up everywhere." So that's essentially what he did. And so this essentially shows us his interest in these very typical Albertan scenes. We've all been out driving I think of these as March paintings. I didn't ask him about this, but I imagine them to be March. A little bit of late snow, the rocks are peering through. Actually, there's quite a bit of snow on this particular one. But, you know, there's that sense then of that, the bones coming through the place, in a way. You know, it's like that. This wall here has the earliest and the latest landscapes beside each other, and we thought we'd do that for a couple of reasons. This is a semi-non-representational landscape from the Lethbridge Art Collection from 1958, and this is a collage from 2005 when he returned to doing visual art after about 20 years of not doing it. So we wanted to just show that these coloristic similarities were here. This one is tissue paper. It's a tissue paper collage. I invite you to have a peek at it if you like, and then compare that with the oil from the 1950s. So this interest in landscape, I think, was very striking and very constant in his work. but it's part of the vagaries of art historical reputation that people tend to get known for one subject rather than another. And so people were very impressed by the large works that I keep advertising to you, and we're going to be moving on to pretty quickly. And they forgot about these rather more quiet, meditative works. Also, in the two showcases, which I'm not going to walk you over to right now, but in the two showcases that are here, you'll see some design sketches. And when I talked about those simultaneous profiles or simultaneous forms, I'd invite you to look at those, as well as an important letter that explains in this showcase here behind you his decision to concentrate on Buddhist practice and on Buddhist teaching, and essentially to leave the visual arts in 1982 and run a teaching school for about 20 years. You're going to see in this room a quite heterogeneous expression of art. On the one hand, you'll have works that are completely non-representational. You'll have some that are semi-representational, and you'll have some that are figurative. This was not a linear progression for him. Essentially what happened was this. By about 1959, these two works are from 1959. This is from the Winnipeg Art Collection, and this is from the Artist's Own collection. He was working totally non-representationally. And this was a really important breakthrough for him because it allowed him to get away from that form-locked quality that I had mentioned to you a couple of minutes ago. I'm wondering if the folks, if we could move in a bit, that would be great, and then folks in the back don't have to feel squished. And it was about this time then, about 1960, 59, 1960, that he really established a national reputation. He had a two-person show at the National Gallery of Canada. This was actually one of the pieces included in that show, and that show toured nationally. Just as an aside, I would mention that it was quite impressive for me to see that the early National Gallery outreach program was very well established. So by the 1950s, 1960s, right about this time, they were sending these works out not only to large centers, but also small little towns and providing people with an opportunity to look at art. So it's just something we can keep in mind as I think, a very good goal. Now, 1962, he received a Canada Council Fellowship that enabled him to go to study in Japan. And this was another key development for him, just as Mexico had been 5 years earlier, because he said later that this was the first time he met a real live Buddhist. He had continued his interest in Buddhist studies, but he got them secondhand. He got them from the Buddhist Society, which was a good one, the British Buddhist Journal, and he met a man named Peter Moore who directed that journal. But we went to Japan, and Japan was, at that time, opening itself to the West again for the Tokyo Olympics in '64. So there was a lot of interest in people coming to Japan, and when someone came, as Ron Gyo-Zo Spickett did, with a real openness and a desire to study, he was received with open arms. So he established some really key relationships that were going to become cemented over the next few years. So when he came back to Canada, he reintroduced the figure. The figure had been left from his work in 59, 60, but then he came back, and this work here is from 1964, the Parade Wavers. It's back. And I think that we'll see this back and forth for the rest of his career, because he felt then that there were a number of ways of expressing the human condition. I must say, I've never really satisfactorily understood this painting. It's curious I chose to speak about it, but it's mainly by way of contrast. And I do